So now I'll talk a little bit about B, or behavioral self-regulation. And again, I will start with a video of my, I guess she's my second cousin, right? She's my cousin's daughter. I had the pleasure of spending time with them this summer. And this is her with her sister. She's now the age of 2.
Tiana, give Kailani. Give Kailani. Take it.
I think we get the point. She's not very happy. In fact, I think some people would call her behavior non-compliant and also a little bit aggressive, the way she was pulling on her sister. She is 2, and that, again, is a natural behavior of a 2-year-old. If you look at the graph, you will see that there is a peak there at the age of 2, and that is aggressive and non-compliant behavior. In fact, human beings are more aggressive at the age of 2 than at any other point in their life. And the first take-home message from that is not to leave any lethal weapons around them. But you will see that the purple graph goes down, and it goes down quite quickly. And it actually goes down, if I was going to go into great detail, it goes down very quickly for girls, more quickly for girls than it does for boys. And that is the vast majority of kids. So they are very, very naughty when they're 2, but they learn how to behave themselves when they acquire language, and they can be reasoned with and all the rest. But some, a significant minority, don't, and they become naughtier and naughtier and naughtier. And we find out that that predicts antisocial behavior when they're older. They're not necessarily naughty in terms of hitting people and things like that, but they become quite divisive and create other trouble when they become older. And we find that there's that this can easily be traced back to non-compliant behavior when children were little. And according to research, it's all the parents' fault. No, it's not. I mean, there are things, children who have temperament issues, children who have language issues tend to be more at risk for this. But there are things that parents do inadvertently that encourage this non-compliant behavior rather than discourage it. You know, when you listen to her scream, one reaction might be, well, she needs to be punished and punished harshly. So that's one inadvertent thing that actually increases this non-compliant behavior. Another is to just sit there, oh, what do I do? What do I do? That again, that doesn't seem to help. Parents can become quite insecure. They don't know what to do. The other is that they might kind of respond quite inconsistently. So they might know the right thing to do, but they might just be too tired. All of those things increase a non-compliant behavior, and we call those coercive parenting behaviors. Another thing that parents don't necessarily know how to do is catch their kid when they're being good and positively reinforcing that. So that's another thing that parents learn through these interventions, and that is the theory of change underpinning the majority of these interventions. We saw 27 of these interventions, and this is their distribution in terms of level of need. The majority of them were either offered at the universal level or at the targeted indicated level. And this is the distribution of evidence. As you can see, the vast majority of effective programs were effective when offered at the targeted indicated level. There were 2 that had no effect, and both of those interventions were offered at the universal level. And I should also say they were offered to families where the average age of the child was less than 2.5 years old. They did not seem to make a big difference. And in fact, one program, which is rolled out in Australia, it doesn't exist any longer, but they concluded, because they also looked at the long-term outcomes, that it was too little too soon. That better time to target these interventions are when kids are 2.5 or older. That's everything I just told you now, just written down. Now I'm going to describe 2 of these programs quite briefly. The first is the Family Checkup Program. Again, this is not in the UK yet, but we thought we'd highlight it now because there's some innovative features to the model. The first is that families, through a routine visit to the GP, get a checkup where they fill out a questionnaire about parenting problems. And if it seems like the child is naughty but the parents have it under control, they go to maybe 1 or 2 sessions for some simple parenting advice. But if there are problems that are indicated, they get up to 15 sessions when the child is between the ages of 2.5 and 3.5. Now, an interesting thing about this program, then, when the child is at age 4, just about ready to go to school, the parents fill out another questionnaire to find out how it's going, and if things haven't quite been fixed, they get a booster or a top-up. So that's the checkup aspect of it. It's a health maintenance model. And they found that actually the effects from this program become stronger over time. That you get good short-term outcomes right after the intervention is done, and then again at age 4, and then again at age 7. So, and it's not a terribly expensive intervention to implement, and it has a very flexible model to make sure that it's meeting the needs of families. And it's also only been evaluated in disadvantaged communities. The second one is Incredible Years. Many of you may have heard of before, that this program has evidence, I think last heard, from 16 RCTs. Some of its most robust studies have taken place in the UK. And the reason I highlight this intervention is, well, first of all, it's not terribly expensive. It's now 22 weeks. It's offered to groups of parents by appropriately trained and supervised practitioners. In fact, there's support for this through IAPT in the UK. But its best evidence is for when it's offered at the targeted indicated level. It's been offered universally in Wales. It's offered in disadvantaged communities all over the world. But at targeted indicated, we find that the effects are the strongest and they're most sustained. And this is in a study that came out just this last year, a 10-year follow-up with families who did this again in South London, where they found that at the targeted indicated level, you saw 10 years later that the children were behaving better, and they actually had better achievement-related skills. So that was a nice byproduct. But the families who attended it at the targeted selected level and at the universal level, those differences faded out. It didn't even have a protective effect. And the theory underpinning that is that when parents know that there's a problem with their kid, they come to these interventions and they pay attention and they learn. But when there's not such a serious problem, they dip in and out. The learning isn't as sustained. So even though the dose was the same, the engagement may have been different. That's just a theory, but that's why I'm highlighting this.